Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Sko Buff Sports. I'm Jimmie Searfoss.
And I am Patrick Dawson.
There's been a lot moving around in the world of the Colorado Buffaloes, both online and physically, including the movement of our own Patrick Dawson here. He had a bit of a trip down to the last Utah football game. Did you see anything on the way there? We saw your tweet.
Well, we saw quite a lot of snow, quite a lot of ice. We felt the snow. It was me, Tallis, Roberto, and Harrison, our great friends here at SBS. And, you know, there were some times we didn't know if we'd make it to the other end of it, but we made it. We pulled through, guys.
It's like a modern-day Lewis and Clark.
Exactly.
Hats off to y'all.
Going westward.
Hats off to y'all. We're going to begin with the unfortunate end of Colorado's football season on Saturday. Coach Prime and the Buffaloes dropped their final game of the year on the road to the Utah Utes 23-17. The loss extended a 6-game losing streak to finish the Buffs season 4-8. 2 games out of bowl contention. 4 Sko Buff Sports members made the trip out to Salt Lake City, including Harrison Simeon, who has our recap.
What's up? I'm Harrison Simeon here for Sko Buff Sports, and we are in Salt Lake City, Utah, as the Colorado football 2023 season came to an unfortunate end this afternoon. 23-17 was the final score. The Utah Utes used their potent running game, having over 260 yards on the ground and throwing the ball only 10 times, with fifth-year starter Luke Batari making the start for the Utes. They salted the game away after they got the ball back with about 7.5 minutes to play and never gave it back to CU. Backup quarterback for the Buffs, Ryan Staub, came in for Shedeur Sanders due to injury and played surprisingly well, finding Travis Hunter for a touchdown. And some trickeration from Jimmy Horn to Dylan Edwards was the other score for Colorado. Staub played a really nice game and proved that he's a viable quarterback too for the Colorado future. Speaking of future, they are headed to the Big 12 Conference after this game was their final in the Pac-12. For Sko Buff Sports, I'm Harrison Simeon here at Rice-Eccles Stadium in Salt Lake City.
Despite the tough loss and the season now over, CU fought hard against the 8-4 Utes and proved how close they can get to beating some of the nation's better teams.
A notable absence from that game, of course, was Shedeur Sanders, who had spent the entirety of the week questionable to close out the Buff season. Shedeur left last week's game against Washington State mid-game with an apparent lower back injury. And it had been revealed from Deion Sanders Jr. late on Sunday, however, that Shedeur's injury was a back fracture. This came after Shedeur finished his season as the most sacked quarterback in FBS football, a total of 52 times in just 11 games. Ending his season a week early, Shedeur finished his first year at Colorado with a 63.1 quarterback rating, 70% completion percentage, and 31 total touchdowns to just 3 interceptions.
The Buffs finished their year with a record of 4 wins and 8 losses and only 1 conference win in their final season of Pac-12 play. The season began hot. Colorado jumped out to a 3-0 record after wins over TCU, Nebraska, and Colorado State, but it all seemed to unravel from there. Colorado would only win 1 more game all year against Arizona State on the road. They would also suffer embarrassing blowouts against the likes of Oregon and Washington State, and also blew a massive 29-point lead against Stanford at home. That was a painful one. Despite what appeared to be an underwhelming end of the year, the Buffs still beat a majority of preseason predictions and had players such as Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter continuously lighting up the stat sheet all season long. The Buffs look to bolster their roster through the transfer portal and high school recruitment as they reload for Season 2 of the Prime era.
And with the end of the season, new arrivals and departures alike are hitting the Buffaloes roster and staff. The most notable change to the Colorado coaching staff so far has been the promotion of Buffs offensive coordinator Sean Lewis to the San Diego State Aztecs. He leaves the Buffs team after being demoted to co-offensive coordinator late this season following a few underwhelming offensive performances and some events of controversial play calling. Lewis will take the job of head coach at San Diego State, who finished 2-6 in the Mountain West Conference and 4-8 total, putting them at the bottom of the conference.
Tight ends coach Tim Brewster also will be departing Boulder as he tweeted out that he is resigning from the position Monday, November 27th. Brewster joined the staff with Coach Prime from Jackson State in December, but was demoted to analyst after the elevation of Pat Shurmur to offensive coordinator, or co-offensive coordinator, in the middle of the season. Brewster has now taken a job as an associate head coach with the Charlotte 49ers.
And despite the season ending, the Buffs football team continues to dominate the headlines in the sports space. In the last few days, the Buffaloes have lost 3 recruits that were verbally committed to CU. Antoine Hill, the number 5 quarterback in the class of 25, and Jamaris Wilder, the number 51 running back in the same class, have both decommitted this week. Furthermore, the Buffs lost another QB recruit with Danny O'Neal, the number 40 quarterback in the class of 24, rescinding his commitment to CU. They join the list of recruits who have decommitted this month, including 2025 receiver Winston Watkins Jr. and 2024 offensive lineman Talon Chandler. Along with the decommitments, the Buffs are also losing some players to the transfer portal. In fact, just over an hour ago, Cristian Lichtenhen announced he was entering the transfer portal. After a hot start, including Pac-12 Offensive Lineman of the Week following the Nebraska game, he and the rest offensive line's play became a hot topic in town after fans witnessed weekly beatdowns of Shedeur Sanders. He joins players such as Marvin Ham and Caleb Fourier in the transfer portal, but the Buffs should not have much trouble replacing their production.
Now that Deion Sanders' first year as head coach has come to an end, let's take a look at some key off-season dates. The transfer portal opens up on December 4th and closes on January 2nd, 2024. Contact period for Coach Prime begins today and continues until December 16th, which is right before early signing day on December 20th. That will go to an end on December 22nd, and the official signing day will begin on February 7th, 2024. Coach Prime and the team are in a bit of a dead period until the winter workouts begin in early January, which will then be followed by spring practice starting in March.
With the Buffs' exodus from the dissolving Pac-12, a new era of football in the Big 12 Conference is set to begin. Despite Pac-12 counterparts such as Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State making the jump to the conference as well, the Buffs will play a near entirely new slate of opponents next season. Baylor, Kansas State, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State will all make the trip to Folsom, while CU will travel to Kansas, Lubbock, and Florida for clashes against the Jayhawks, Red Raiders, and UCF Knights respectively. The move may bode well for Colorado's winning chances as well, due to the Big 12's prevalent high-flying offensive play style, which is more catered to the strengths of the black and gold.
Coach Prime's Season 2's trailer has dropped, and the show has followed Coach Prime from Jackson State here to Boulder, Colorado, to get a behind-the-scenes look at this 2023 season. I'll be looking forward to at least the first few episodes of this one.
Sports Illustrated has released this year's Sports Person of the Year. As previously mentioned, Colorado shocked the college football community with their 3-0 start. They had previously hijacked headlines throughout the entirety of the spring season with their well-documented roster and coaching staff turnover. Coach Prime has come in and changed the trajectory of an entire university at large, and Sports Illustrated is recognizing that with this accolade. After the Colorado men's basketball team lost their number 18 ranking in this week's AP poll, while in-state rival Colorado State broke into the rankings at number 20, the ranked Rams charged through the Buffaloes in a 5-point win on Wednesday night in Fort Collins. The Buffs started off slow in the first half as they scored only 26 points and trailed by 15 heading into halftime. The second half was a different story as junior KJ Simpson and freshman Cody Williams combined for 41 points in the half for the Buffs. Simpson finished with a game-high 30 points, and unfortunately for the black and gold, their first half miscues and lack of defense proved too much for them to handle as they lost 88-83 despite the valiant second half scoring effort. CSU's Isaiah Stevens led the way with 20 points and 11 assists, while former Buff Nick Clifford added 15 points and 6 rebounds in the win. Joel Scott, the younger brother of legendary Buffs big man Josh Scott, also scored 15 points for the Rams. While the win definitely stings for Colorado, they still hold an overall record of 91-39 over Colorado State in the series.
Hey, my name is Oliver Hayes, and I am back to bring you another edition of Buff Banner. This past Wednesday, the Colorado men's basketball team lost to the number 20 Colorado State Rams for the 39th time ever in the 130th clash between the two in-state rivals. With the game being played at a sold-out Moby Arena in Fort Collins, the Rams faithful stormed the court after the 5-point win. While the court storm has ruffled some feathers due to rankings, who was favored going into the game, and all that other bull junk, it was the blatant attempts by CSU fans to spark a reaction from CU players by running up into their personal space with phones out, screaming profanities that has brought up the long-lasting question of, is rushing the court or field actually safe? Since the beginning of the fun, long-lasting tradition of huge college sports wins over ranked opponents in rival schools, the question of safety has always been there. Sure, the infamous yet quite hilarious moment when the Stanford band ran onto the field of play while Cal ran in the last-second game-winning touchdown during a 1982 game might be the first thing you think of.
Give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone. He's going into the end of the Bears. The Bears have won. The Bears have won.
But in multiple instances on the gridiron, fans have unfortunately gotten injured due to pulling down the field goal post, with a fan even dying in 2005 due to a hit from the uprights. Regardless of the sport, trampling has always been an issue, with thousands of fans, a majority of them potentially intoxicated, trying their absolute hardest to get onto the field or court as fast as possible. But it isn't only a problem for the fans, as we saw on Wednesday. It's an issue for the players and coaches. In 2014, tensions rose after the Utah Valley men's basketball team defeated New Mexico State. Fans rushed the floor, with a number of them getting into the brawl between the two teams, as some fans even threw punches at New Mexico State players. Over the past few years, multiple videos have come out of fans rushing up to players with phones out before getting hit by the frustrated player who just lost a big game. While the players should keep their cool and fans should be more worried about the safety of others, the unfortunate truth is that these issues will continue to rise as long as the tradition is alive. With some conferences fining schools for rushing the playing area, the thousands of dollars the university has to pay is the last thing these students are thinking about. Despite PA announcers and many others even pleading with fans to not rush the field or court, the tradition has still occurred anyway. So far, the only way to stop this from happening is when the home team themselves have asked their fans to not rush the floor. Legendary Duke basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski successfully stopped a court rush after defeating their bitter rivals in North Carolina back in 2013. Coach K has also proposed that schools need to allow the teams to get to the locker rooms before fans rush. However, it shouldn't be up to the home squad to have to stop the storming, because fans can't have the common courtesy to be respectful, safe, or have the restraint to just not indulge in the tradition. So as the NCAA and their conferences work to stop the issue, it is more than worth reminding our fellow Buffs, as well as others, that if you do indeed rush the playing area, to be cognizant of your actions. At the end of the day, these players are your age, just trying their best to perform at the highest level they can. Plus, who wants to potentially injure or kill their fellow students, or even yourself? Well, that's all I have for this week's edition of Buff Banner. My name is Oliver Hayes, sending it back to you guys at the desk.
The Colorado Buffaloes women's basketball team suffered their first loss of the season last Saturday, losing by a score of 78-60 versus number 10 North Carolina State. NC State was going to be a highly competitive matchup for the Buffs, who were undefeated prior to the game, including a win over defending champion LSU in their season opener. In their third game in 3 days at the Paradise Jam Classic, the Buffs appeared to be just kind of gassed. Despite the near 20-point loss, there were still some bright spots in the game. Jalen Sherrod continued her star play, putting up 20 points and going a flawless 10 for 10 from the free throw line. Frida Foreman hit 4 threes in the second half and scored all 14 of her points in the final 20 minutes of play.
Regardless of that loss, the Colorado women's basketball team remains ranked in the top 10. Now, ranked at number 7, ironically sharing the rank with the 7-1 LSU Tigers, who began the year with an upset loss to the Buffaloes. With 2 other one-loss teams in the top 10, it's still anybody's fight for good positioning come March Madness. And Colorado is just one of 4 Pac-12 teams in the AP Top 25 poll this week, all of which are higher than CU. Those being the number 2 UCLA Bruins, number 3 Stanford Cardinal, and the number 6 USC Trojans.
The women's basketball team returned to Boulder Tuesday night to take on the Boston University Terriers, running away with the victory after an incredible 38-5 run in the game's closing 12 minutes. Terrace Harris was there with the recap.
Hey there, Buffs fans. I'm Terrace Harris reporting from the CU Event Center after your women's basketball team took on the Boston University Terriers. Your Buffs were looking to battle back in this game after losing their last one to the number 10 ranked NC State. However, the bounce back didn't come easy, as for the first 3 quarters, the game stayed neck and neck, as the lead never extended past 10 for any team. In the second quarter, we got to see Frida Foreman hit her 1,000th career point, and she ended up leading the team with 22 points, followed by Aranette Vonleh's 18 and Jalen Sherrod's 14. In the fourth quarter, with the Terriers up 3, your Buffs were looking to bounce back, and they did exactly that, as they ended up going on a 38-5 final run that ended out with them leading by 30 with the final score 85-55. Once again, this is Terrace Harris reporting from the CU Event Center for ScoBuff Sports.
During the insane run against the Terriers, the Buffs at one point scored 18 consecutive points. And that brings us to today's trivia question. We want to know, what was the most consecutive points scored by the women's basketball team in CU history? Stay tuned for the answer later in the show.
The Colorado Buffaloes volleyball team suffered a heartbreaking loss to the Utah Utes last Saturday afternoon. In what was an incredibly important matchup, the Buffs needed a win for a better chance at the postseason tournament, and the Buffs surrendered their 2-1 set lead and lost the match in 5 sets. Senior outside hitter Maya Tebron led the team with 15 kills in her final collegiate matchup. She was followed by freshman Lily Dwinell with 13 and senior Alexa Kuhl scoring a season-high 10 kills. The loss wrapped up what ended up being a disappointing season for the team, who at one point held a record of 11 wins and 3 losses, including a streak of 5 consecutive 3-0 sweeps. However, the Pac-12 play was not kind to the Buffs, and they would only win 5 more matches and finish with a record of 16 wins and 15 losses. The road ended up being the Buffs' biggest weakness, and they ended up with a losing record of 5-8 on the road contests. But they do have a strong young core, and the Buffs are going to look to refocus this winter to prepare for next season.
Pac-12 postseason volleyball awards have been released, and the Buffs had 5 players receive recognition. Despite the aforementioned disappointing end to the season, the Buffs' individual talent was spectacular all year long. Seniors Maya Tebron, Sky Howard, and Lexi Heydrich all received honorable mentions to the All-Pac-12 volleyball team. Freshmen Kayla Payne and Lily Dwinell also made their way into the All-Freshman team, with Colorado being one of only 2 schools to have multiple freshmen on the team. Dwinell also received another award of her own, being named the Pac-12 Freshman of the Week in the regular season's final week. Despite losing 3 nationally recognized seniors, the Buffs have hope in their young talent to fill that void.
The CU women's soccer team season may have ended a few weeks back as well, but that didn't stop them from getting a few more postseason honors from heading their way this past week. Senior forward Shira James was announced as an All-American on Thursday, being listed as the 3rd team. She also made the All-Pacific region 1st team, while freshman defender Faith Leba made the All-Region 3rd team, as voted on by the United Soccer Coaches. James led the Pac-12 with 15 goals last season, while Leba spearheaded the strong Buffs back line to 8 shutouts and led the team in minutes played.
Both the men's and women's cross-country teams ended their season last Saturday, placing in the top 30 at Panorama Falls. The women's team placed 19th in Charlottesville, and with 2 All-American performances in the 6K, Ella Barron led the Buffs, finishing 27th after she climbed from 82nd at the midway point. Emily Covert held her ground in the first half of the race as Colorado's leading runner and eventually placed 50th after the final stretch. Those 2 were the only Buffs to place in the top 2. At the same 6K, the men's team finished 25th with Austin Vansel leading the way for the Buffs. Climbing 29 spots in the final 2 kilometers, he finished 39th on Saturday as the only Buff to place in the top 100. Both teams held their own this season, but unfortunately placed below their rank at this final meet.
Buffs fans, it's once again time to unveil our candidates for Play of the Week. We asked you on Twitter, which of these 4 spectacular moments was best? Was it This trick play, which saw receiver Jimmie Horn Jr. throw a 30-yard touchdown on the money to running back Dylan Edwards to get CU on the board against Utah, or was it this Frida Foreman 1,000th career point with the 3 ball in the second quarter of the women's hoops win over Boston, or was it this high-flying two-handed jam from Cody Williams and the men's basketball team's win over Iowa, or was it this perfectly placed throw from Ryan Staub to Travis Hunter in the Utah game, displaying their impressive connection and Staub's first career start for CU? The winner will be revealed just a little bit later on in this show.
Let's go, Buffs!
Thank you.
What's up, Buff Nation? I'm Zachary Giesenschlag here with this week's edition of Rapid Fire. Football may be over, but there's still plenty of Buffalo action to keep up with. A common theme this weekend is going to be hockey, starting today with the women's team at home at 5 p.m. as they take on Grand Canyon University. Tomorrow we see both the D1 and D2 men's teams in action at home, with the D2 team facing Texas at 4 p.m. and the D1 team taking on Colorado State in another Rocky Mountain showdown at 7. Sunday we'll see the women's team play again at 11 a.m., still facing Grand Canyon University. Shifting gears, the track team will be competing all day today and tomorrow at the Mines Alumni Classic in Golden, Colorado. Rounding out the weekend is both men and women's basketball, with the women's team squaring off against the Air Force Academy at 1 on Saturday and the men's team taking on Pepperdine at 3 p.m. on Sunday. That just about covers Buffalo athletics for the weekend. We'll see you all next time, and as always, Sco Buffs.
And now, it's time to reveal the Play of the Week winner. Drum roll, please. The winners receiving an overwhelming 87% of the votes are Jimmie Horn and Dylan Edwards. This trick play was a fake screen from Staub to Horn, leaving Dylan Edwards wide open past the defenders for a perfectly placed ball. The score got CU going offensively, and despite the loss, displayed some creativity in the Buffs offense even this late in the season.
If the Rocky Mountain Showdown on the hardwood wasn't enough Colorado State action for you, the two teams will meet together tonight and tomorrow on the ice for the first edition of the Rocky Mountain Face-Off this season. On this week's episode of Dangle, Snipe, and Stampede, Alex and Aiden break down this big weekend. Take a look.
CU finds himself 8th in the conference, though. Not all hope is lost. I think that's probably because they've just played the fewest amount of games in the conference as well. Yeah. I think that they just don't have as much experience. And I think if you're CSU, you want to take advantage of that. You want to make sure that, okay, we're going to be playing, when we leave the rec center, we'll have played 20 games. Mm-hmm. We've played 6 more games than this team that we're playing right now.
Yes.
We need to make that a big point of emphasis, and we need to show them that we are the better team because of our experience.
Yes, and
needs to make sure that they catch them by surprise.
And in their past 10, the Rams are 6-4, whereas the opposite, Buffs are 4-6. So this in addition to the Missouri State game, 2 games were important for points and standing wise. So is this. This is a division rival. This is not just a division rival, but a school rival in all sports. So the emotions are going to be higher than they would be realistically against any other team.
Yeah.
And there's just going to be emotionally that much more to these 2 games here. Negating all that, it's going to be 2 important games points wise. Should the Buffs win both of these, they're suddenly win both of these in regulation.
They go above the Rams.
They're suddenly in much better points percentage, points standings in the conference, and I would hope rankings to end the semester. And
well, speaking on the rankings, they took a really what I personally thought was a really heavy drop, despite splitting with Missouri State. Mm-hmm. I think that was a very heavy drop. They dropped from 28 to 36. They dropped nearly 10 spots.
Yeah.
In 1 week, after splitting with the top 25 team at home. And part of me might think that they lost and then they blew a 4-goal lead.
Yes, I think that's definitely part of it.
I think that's definitely part of their decline, but I still think it's a bit much.
But being able to close it out in overtime, I do think should have...
At least being able to win that game,
yes.
I think at least should have helped their case. But
had they lost in overtime,
this makes total sense. And frankly, I mean, I don't want to know where they would be if they lost that game in overtime.
Wow,
they probably may not even be top 40 right now. So it's gonna be very interesting going forward. And frankly, I think these two games are incredibly important, not just because it's against Colorado State, but the good thing is that CU has only been swept in a 2-game series once this year by Central Oklahoma.
Yes.
But on the other hand, they've only swept a 2-game set once, and that was the opener against San Diego State. They have split the other 4 series, and in only one of those did they win the first game.
Yeah.
So they're finding their stride in the second game of these 2-game sets. They need to find a way to make it and get it done in game 1.
Yeah.
Because they can get it done in game 2. They've proven that.
Yes, and that'll be important because that second game is at home. But yes, that first game on the road, Fort Collins, is going to be a big test, end of semester test for this team. Can they lock it down on game 1 on the road?
The Buffs will host the match tonight at 7:45 p.m., while the Buffs get their chance to host the game tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Rec Center. Show up wearing your favorite white Buffs merch for a whiteout at the Rec Center on Saturday.
Why wait to show support for your hockey Buffs when you can go to the Rec Center right now and cheer on the women's team? The women's hockey Buffs will face off against Grand Canyon at 5 p.m. right after our show ends. It's a big game for the Buffs, so go out and show your support. If you can't make it, that's fine. CU will play Grand Canyon again on Sunday at 11 a.m. All live streams of the game can be found right here on our YouTube channel if you can't make it in person this weekend.
Now it's time for the answer to today's trivia question. We asked you, what was the most consecutive amount of points scored by the women's basketball team in CU history? Drum roll, please, Patrick. The answer is 30 consecutive points in a game. It occurred February 19th in 1993 against Iowa State. That was a good one, wasn't it? That was impressive.
That's a wild total.
I remember it. It was crazy.
To wrap things up, it's our social media post of the week. This week, we have a funny exchange between Colorado Governor Jared Polis and CU kicker Alejandro Mata regarding Mata taking his U.S. citizenship test.
And that is just about all we got for you here on this week's episode of Sko Buff Sports. Make sure you strap in as things are fixing to get crazy here in the Buffs rumor mill. So make sure you follow us at SBS on Twitter, and I'm Jimmie Searfoss on Twitter.
And I'm Patrick Dawson 24.
Make sure you follow us to get all the best updates and just have a good time with us. I've been Jimmie Searfoss.
I'm Patrick Dawson.
Remember, you heard it here first.